You ever wonder what it takes for a man to leave his sins behind? Not just say he's changed, but really walk away from the blood, the steel, the fire that made him. Most men don't get that chance, but some do, and sometimes it comes in the strangest form you'd ever imagine. This is a story about a woman who saw too much and an outlaw who'd spent his whole life running from what he'd become. It's about silence, fear, and a love that shouldn't have lived, but did anyway. This is a story they don't tell around the saloons, but I'll tell it now. Pull up close, keep your ears sharp, because what happened in that mountain cabin changed two lives forever. Spring of 1883. Southern Colorado Territory. A place caught between the railroad and the mesa, where folks still carried iron on their hips and prayed the law wouldn't reach 'em before Sunday. In the town of Ashford Creek, there wasn't much to brag about. One main street, a mercantile, a saloon that smelled like kerosene and regret, and a bank. Small, quiet, just the kind of place desperate men liked to visit. Now, in that town lived a woman by the name of Eleanor Greer. Ellie, they called her. She wasn't much for conversation, kept to herself mostly. Worked as a seamstress out of a boarding house, mending clothes, patching bullet holes in coats, stitching torn hems for women who didn't have the patience for it. She was plain in the way that draws no attention. Thin, soft-spoken, the kind of woman folks passed on the street without a second glance. But there was something about Ellie that not many saw. She noticed things, the way a man walked, the way another kept his hand too close to his belt, the way strangers rode into town and didn't look nobody in the eye. She saw the world like it was a quilt full of loose threads, and she could always tell which ones were about to come undone. Pause. That gift would save her life, and damn near destroy it too. Now, on the other side of this story was a man named Caleb Rourke. Caleb had been a lot of things in his 30-some years. A ranch hand, a drifter, a soldier, briefly, during the tail end of a war nobody wanted to remember, and for the last 7 years, an outlaw. Not by choice, he'd tell you, but necessity don't care much for a man's intentions. He'd ridden with a crew out of New Mexico, hard men with cold eyes and faster hands. They hit banks, stagecoaches, payroll wagons, never killed unless they had to. But they had to more often than Caleb liked. He was good at it. That was the problem. Good with a gun, good at reading a room, good at staying calm when the world went to hell. But Caleb was tired. Tired of running. Tired of watching his back, tired of waking up in strange towns and wondering if today was the day a bullet found him. So he'd made a decision. One last job, then he'd disappear. Take his share, head north, maybe buy a little piece of land where nobody knew his name. Start clean. Beat. The problem with one last job is that it's never just one, and it's never clean. It was a Tuesday morning when they hit the Ashford Creek bank. 4 men, Caleb and 3 others. They rode in quiet, dismounted slow, tied their horses near the side alley where the shadows hung thick. Caleb pulled his bandana up over his nose, checked his Colt, took a breath. One last time, he thought. Then I'm done. They walked in just after 9. The bank was near empty. A clerk behind the counter, an older man counting bills in the corner, and sitting by the window, quiet as a church mouse, Eleanor Greer. She'd come in to deposit her week's earnings, $12.30. Not much, but it was hers. She looked up when the door swung open, and she knew. She didn't scream, didn't run, just sat there, fingers tight around the little cloth purse in her lap, heart hammering like a drum. One of the men, a hothead named Dutch, leveled his rifle at the clerk. "Safe, now," the clerk stammered, fumbled with the keys. Another man, Silas, grabbed the old man by the collar and shoved him to the floor. Caleb stood near the door, watching the street. His role was simple: keep watch, keep calm, get out clean. But then he saw her, Eleanor, pressed into the corner by the window, eyes wide, breathing shallow. Their eyes met for just a second, and in that second, Caleb saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Fear. Not the kind that makes a person fight, the kind that makes him break. The robbery went south fast. The clerk panicked, pulled a hidden derringer from under the counter. Silas shot him. The old man tried to run. Dutch cracked him across the head with the rifle butt. Blood, smoke, shouting, and through it all, Eleanor didn't move. She just sat there, frozen, silent. Caleb barked the order. "We're leaving. Now." They grabbed the money, bolted for the door. But as Caleb turned to go, he looked back. Eleanor was still there, staring at the bodies, at the blood spreading across the floorboards. She'd seen everything, every face, every voice, every movement. And Caleb knew, in that split second, that she was in danger, because Dutch had seen her too. They rode hard out of town, into the foothills, into the pines. But Dutch kept talking. "That woman saw us, saw everything." Silas agreed. "She's a witness. Can't leave a witness." Caleb said nothing, just rode. But his mind was racing. He knew what they'd do, knew they'd double back, knew they'd find her. And he couldn't let that happen. He didn't know why, couldn't explain it. But something in the way she looked at him, not with hatred, not with judgment, just awareness. It stuck with him like a thorn under the skin. So when they split up to lay low, Caleb made a choice. He rode back. Eleanor hadn't gone home. She'd run. Smart girl. She knew what came next. She'd grabbed what she could, a coat, a canteen, a small knife, and headed into the wilderness. No plan, no direction, just away. By nightfall, she was lost. Cold, hungry, terrified. She stumbled through the dark, following a creek, praying she wouldn't freeze before morning. And that's when she heard the horse. She ducked behind a tree, held her breath. The rider dismounted. Boots hit the dirt. And then a voice, low, steady. "I ain't here to hurt you." It was Caleb. He found her shivering by the creek. Didn't say much, just held out his hand. She didn't take it at first, but when he said, "They're coming for you, and I ain't letting that happen," she believed him. So she followed. Caleb had a place, a cabin, tucked high in the mountains, miles from any trail. It wasn't much. One room, a stone fireplace, a cot, a table. But it was hidden, and for now it was safe. He brought her inside, lit the fire, gave her a blanket. She didn't speak, just sat there, staring into the flames. Caleb poured her water, set some jerky and hardtack on the table. "You eat. I'll keep watch." She looked at him then, really looked, and she asked the question he knew was coming. "Why?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He sat down across from her, removed his hat, ran a hand through his hair. Finally, he said, "Because I'm tired of being the kind of man who don't." The first few days were quiet. She didn't trust him. How could she? But she didn't have a choice, so she stayed. And slowly, things began to shift. Caleb didn't talk much. Neither did she. But there was a rhythm to their silence. He'd chop wood. She'd mend his torn shirt. He'd cook. She'd clean the tin plates. He'd sit by the fire at night, cleaning his gun. She'd sit across from him, hands folded in her lap. No words, just presence. And somehow, that was enough. One night, about a week in, she finally spoke. "You don't seem like the others." Caleb looked up. "What do you mean?" "The men you rode with," she said quietly. "They were cruel. But you—" She trailed off. Caleb set down his gun. "I've done cruel things, ma'am. Don't mistake silence for innocence." "I'm not," she said, "but I see the way you look at your hands, like you wish they were clean." Caleb didn't respond, but she'd seen him, really seen him, and for the first time in years he felt ashamed. Days turned into weeks, and somewhere in the silence something grew. Not loud, not desperate, but steady. Caleb started teaching her things: how to shoot, how to track, how to survive if she had to run again. She started asking him questions about his life, his choices, his regrets. He told her things he'd never told anyone, and she listened. Not with judgment, just listened. One night, under a sky full of stars, Caleb spoke the truth. "I don't know how to be good, Ellie. I don't know if I ever was." She turned to him. "Maybe being good ain't about what you were. Maybe it's about what you choose right now." He looked at her then, really looked, and he realized something that terrified him more than any bullet ever had. He loved her, but love don't live long in a world built on running. One morning, Caleb woke to the sound of horses. Dutch, Silas, and two others. They'd found the cabin. Caleb grabbed his rifle, looked at Eleanor. "Stay inside. No matter what you hear, you stay inside." She nodded, but her eyes said what her mouth couldn't. "Don't die." Caleb stepped outside. 4 men, guns drawn. Dutch grinned. "Thought you'd run off with our money, Caleb. Didn't think you'd run off with a witness." Caleb's hand hovered near his Colt. "She don't know nothing, let her be." "Can't do that, brother. She saw our faces, and now, so it happened fast." Caleb drew first, dropped Dutch before he could blink. Silas fired, missed. Caleb put him down too. The other 2 scattered, fired wild, hit nothing but wood and air. Caleb moved like a man possessed, calm, controlled, lethal. When the smoke cleared, he was the only one left standing. Eleanor stepped outside, saw the bodies, saw the blood, saw Caleb breathing hard, gun still in hand. She didn't run. She walked to him, put her hand on his chest, and said, "You're not that man anymore." Caleb dropped the gun, and for the first time in his life, he believed it. They left that cabin a week later, headed north, to a place where no one knew their names. Caleb bought a small piece of land, built a house, raised horses. Eleanor opened a little shop, sold quilts and preserves. They never spoke of that bank, or those men, or the blood, but every night they'd sit by the fire, in silence, and that silence was full of everything they'd ever need to say. See, folks, sometimes love don't come with fanfare. Sometimes it comes quiet, in the spaces between words, in the choice to stay when you could run, in the act of seeing someone, not for what they've done, but for who they're trying to become. Caleb Rourke was an outlaw, but Eleanor Greer, she saw a man, and that made all the difference. So if you take one thing from this story, let it be this: we ain't defined by the worst thing we ever did. We're defined by what we do after. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to believe in us. One person to see the good we're too scared to see in ourselves. That's the kind of love that changes a life. That's the kind of love worth riding into the unknown for. Thanks for listening, friend. Till the next story, Keep your boots dusty and your heart open.